Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen and everyone. You are very welcome this morning to the International Women in Travel and Tourism Forum, our third one, IWTTF. My name is Alessandra Alonso. I'm the founder of IWTTF, and Managing Director of Women in Travel, CIC. So for the past 5 years, social enterprise Women in Travel has been partnering with industry to economically empower women and non-binary individuals by providing employment, enterprising, and development opportunities to those who are less fortunate, perhaps disadvantaged, marginalized, underrepresented, but also to women like many of you here today who are already in the sector and are also looking for opportunity to develop, to mentor and be mentored and to grow. We are passionate about making the industry more diverse, and we are passionate about making the industry more diverse through embracing a diverse workforce. And really, that's what we are hoping to talk about, discuss today. So in March 2022, we published our first social impact report covering 5 years of work. My God, 5 years. Some of its highlights include 12 hours of support provided to over 150 vulnerable women between 2021 and 2020, so at the height of the pandemic. Thousands of women have been mentored and have received support through mentoring circle, mentoring groups, reverse mentoring, one-to-one mentoring, thanks to many volunteers, some of whom are actually here today. And we've also launched new and innovative programs that really encourage women into enterprising, tourism and travel enterprising. So I invite you all to download a copy. It's available from our website and go through sort of some of its content. I think it's quite substantial. And really think about how you as an individual, but also your organization can perhaps be involved, and talk to us and to many here who are involved throughout the day. So I wish you all a great IWTTF, and I want to thank sponsors, partners, speakers, everyone. This is a massive effort on the part of a not very big team, but a lot of people who are supporting on the side and cheering for us. So we will now play a short video. This is the welcome from Zina Bencheikh of Intrepid Travel, who can't be here this morning, but will be with us in the afternoon. And after that, we will start with the first panel. So thank you again and enjoy the day.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited that we're able to hold this event in person again, especially after such a challenging couple of years. The idea for a forum about gender equality and diversity was born when Alessandra and I first met at the World Travel Market in 2018. The discussion we had that day made us feel that it was time for less words and more action on diversity and inclusion. We needed a place where men and women could meet, to share their experience, learn from each other, but most importantly, walk away with actions that they could implement in their own businesses. Since then, we've held a very successful event in Iceland in 2020, as well as a virtual forum last year, both with fantastic feedback. So before we look at what's coming up, let's think about the context for this year's event. There are still only 8 female CEOs in the FTSE 100 and 74 in the Fortune 500. Although women represent 55% of the workforce in the tourism industry, only 8% hold high responsibility positions. Research has shown how dramatically the pandemic affected women globally. They struggled with the double shift of household responsibilities, mental health challenges, remote working, and higher rate of unemployment. So much that McKinsey called the economic downturn caused by the pandemic the first she-cession. However, we have seen some improvement in the UK. Almost 40% of the FTSE 100 board positions are now held by women. And in our industry, recent research shows that the gender pay gap has decreased. During the pandemic, we also have seen so many women leading from the front. They became a voice for others that didn't have a voice themselves. I'm thinking about Julia from Advantage, who has done an amazing job standing up for our industry. But others as well started new businesses, took on new leadership positions, took their own business from strength to strength, and we'll hear hopefully from several of them today. But the fact remains that women are still burnt out. We've all heard about the Great Resignation, and many are stepping down, not returning to work. They're lost to the economy. A recent survey by Deloitte showed that more than half of female employees plan to quit their job within the next 2 years due to burnout or lack of flexible work hours. At the same time, recruitment is tougher than ever. In the UK alone, 200,000 jobs remain vacant in the hospitality and travel. 40% of operators in travel are worried about recruitment. Workers are in hot demand, so we can't afford to be complacent. We can't afford to do things the same way we've always done them. The benefits of having a diverse workforce are more relevant than ever. If D&I is woven into a business, the business will attract better talent, retain good people, and ultimately be more successful. This is why it is so important to ensure that women are fully contributing to the economy. We need to include not just women, but all women from diverse and intersectional backgrounds. And we need everyone to support and engage with diversity and inclusion to succeed. And this is why we're meeting again in 2022 at the IWTTF to address topical areas around leadership, talent, diversity and inclusion, and allyship. This is also why the work of women in travel matters so much. For us at Intrepid, the last 2 years has given us some time to reflect on what it means to be a truly responsible and inclusive tour operator. And that is why last year we introduced an ethical marketing policy. We work with an amazing group of people who are passionate about building a more inclusive future for the travel industry, and now we have clear actions that we measure and report on each year. Another highlight for us was working with Women in Travel to host a retreat in Morocco for multicultural content creators. Budding content creators had the chance to learn from more established influencers and, of course, enjoy a taste of Morocco and Intrepid style. We've learned so much from this fantastic group of women about how to work with influencers to reach more diverse audience that we can then put in practice and that will beneficiate our business. But it's not only about ensuring our marketing is inclusive. We want to ensure our trips experiences are too. So recently, as we were expanding our product range in the US, we've introduced a new range that amplifies and celebrates BIPOC culture. There's some amazing experiences, from learning how to cook Cajon food at a female-owned African-American cooking school in New Orleans, to having a Native American river-to-table lunch in Oregon. So we're not perfect, but we're striving to do better every day. What can you expect from today's events? Well, as I said, we'll be meeting some inspirational speakers and asking some big questions, like what role women can play in the post-pandemic world. Why are women still coming up against barriers on the way up to leadership? What part can diversity play in addressing the current talent crisis? We'll also be catching up on the Male Allyship Network that was launched following last year's forum and hearing from some of the mentors and mentees about what they have learned from each other. Today's event has sold out very quickly, and it's not surprising, thanks to the amazing speakers we have lined up. It's great to see that all of you want to seize this opportunity to make a real progress. So I really hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to join you later. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Morning. Can I ask my 5 panelists to join me on the stage?
We're 5, shall we move? I can't count.
Well, hello, IWTTF. We're all awake. This is brilliant. Okay. Well, it's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and also lots of new faces here. So for those who don't know me, my name is Fiona Anderson, and I'm a company director at GECPR, a specialist travel and lifestyle PR consultancy. And I have been an advisory board member for Women in Travel for nearly 4 years now. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here and to be involved in this panel today. This 45-minute session is going to focus on moments that matter. So what do we mean by this? One pivotal moment, or lots of moments that merge into a stream of consciousness? Well, I think moments that matter can be all of these things. For me, It was both a sod it moment that got me to quit my steady corporate PR career in order to travel solo around the world some 20 years ago, and that put me on this journey into becoming a travel PR. But also, a series of events have led to me taking the brave and life-changing decision to set up my own company some 5 years ago as well, in 2017. Our 5 panellists today will be sharing their own take on moments that matter and this important theme. And after they share a bit about themselves, they will talk about their personal interpretation of moments that matter. Having been lucky enough to speak to each of the panellists in the run-up to this event, I am sure you will find this session truly inspiring. And I'm sure you'll want to ask them to delve deeper once they each share their moments. We will have a little time for questions once the panellists have spoken, and there will be a bit of conversation on the stage as well, but time is quite tight. But don't worry, thanks to Google, there are lots of nice coffee breaks throughout the day, so you can catch up with the panellists individually a bit later. So today, I am joined by, perhaps you can give a wave, panellists, author and travel writer Georgina Lawton, Anna Pollock, owner and director of Conscious Travel, Alexa Maria Rathbone Barker, founder of tripAbrood, Kat Jones, founder of Byway, and Nena Chaletzos, founder of Luxtripper. So let's just give them all another round of applause. This is a fantastic lineup. Right, let's get to those moments that matter. So, Georgina, can I ask you to introduce yourself and share your moment that matters?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Georgina Lawton. I'm a travel writer, a memoirist, and a journalist. And I wanted to talk to you today about some of the moments that have mattered in my personal life and how that's fed into my journey moving into the travel sphere and being a travel writer. So when I look back at how I began traveling and how that sort of fueled my career, I think back to lots of family holidays that I had growing up. I grew up on the outskirts of London in Zone 5 in Sutton, where nothing really exciting happens. It's kind of on the borders of London and Surrey, and I had a very normal upbringing and went to a comprehensive school and had a great time doing that, met lots of friends. And we went on semi-regular family holidays, a week to Spain, a week to France. My mum is Irish, so we spent a lot of time in Ireland. And I had these amazing family holidays and these great memories, but everywhere I looked, I couldn't see anybody that looked like me. And that started off in my family because my mum is Irish and my dad that raised me was white, and my brother looks like them, he's white too. And with each trip that we took, a sort of protective bubble of whiteness would get popped a little bit more because I'd meet new friends and they'd say, oh, how come you don't look like your family? Or are you adopted? Or isn't that your family in the queue in the airport? And that would be, Jamaican family or somebody that looked more like me. And I took these trips, and with every trip, a little bit more of my bubble was popped. And I started to think more about where I could be from. And I used to ask my parents with increasing frequency growing up, why am I not white as well? Why am I black? Why does nobody look like me in my family? And my mum would say, we don't need to talk about that. We love you. We don't talk about race. It's not important. And occasionally she would talk about me being a potential throwback gene, which doesn't make any sense at all. Very much aware of that now, but as a child, that was something we leaned into. And she's from the west coast of Ireland in a place called County Clare. And there's a place there called Spanish Point. And we used to say that I could have inherited my dark, not black, my dark looks from an ancestor that came from Spain or Portugal. And as a small child, that anchored me into, this Irish mythology and anchored me into my mum's folklore and it anchored me into my white family. And I had so much love and support from them, but each trip I took just chipped a little bit away more at my story. And then by the time I was 22, I had just kind of accepted that I was black, I was mixed, but I didn't know why that was. And I loved my parents and we didn't talk about race. And then I got to university and my dad got really sick and he actually passed away just after I graduated. And I had lots of questions about, what that would mean for us if we had these discussions when he was ill, but he couldn't speak to me because he was so sick. And I couldn't, face up to the reality that we might not be related. But a year after he passed away, I had a DNA test, that was sitting in my room when he was around, and I processed it, and it confirmed that we weren't dad and daughter in the biological sense. And this kind of obliterated my world once again, because I was already grieving, but I had to then think about what it means to have a personal identity completely deconstructed after you think you know who you are for so long, and what it means to, you know, not have the biological relationship with one of your parents that you thought you had, even though to many people looking in, it was quite obvious. So this kick-started a personal journey traveling to Black majority countries. I wanted to catch up and play catch up and make up for lost time. So I wanted to be around people that looked like me. I wanted to get my hair done properly. I wanted to see faces that looked like mine, and that meant leaving Zone 5 Sutton, because there wasn't much of that there. There's a bit more there now, but there wasn't much of that there, 7 years ago. So I started off in Brooklyn, and I think I was leaning towards the most obvious cultural signifiers of blackness. I was like, right, let's go to America, let's go to New York. Like, that's where all the black people are at, even though I could have done it in Brixton, but wanted to go to New York, went to New York, lived there for 6 months, and got a job writing remotely, and then got put on a press trip. And I started to realize that there were jobs out there for people like me who wanted to write about travel. There were spaces in the travel industry for women who were traveling solo, but there weren't very many of us. But once I got put on this press trip to Vietnam, it really inspired me to keep writing about things that I cared about. And I carried on, and I went to Nicaragua, I went to the Dominican Republic, I went to Cuba, I went to South Africa, and I did a lot of work with Intrepid, got put on some fantastic trips with them. And it really affirmed to me that, there was a space for me in this world. I could write about things that I cared about. But also, on the road, I guess a few moments that also mattered were the times when things didn't go right, the times when I realized that because I looked like the local people in the countries I was traveling to, I'd actually be treated differently to the white backpackers that I was traveling with. Getting mistaken for the help, getting mistaken for a prostitute, having people speak to me in a language that wasn't mine. All of that kind of came at the forefront of a time when I was also constructing my own identity and working out what kind of woman I wanted to be, what kind of writer I wanted to be, and what it meant to be a Black mixed woman in those spaces as well. So I did a lot of learning, and a lot of other moments that meant a lot to me were, seeing the points of reference between Black people around the world, getting my hair done on somebody's couch in Costa Rica. That was really amazing. Learning to speak Spanish and passing as Cuban, and being able to write a piece about people because I looked like them and I was engendered to them because I could pass as a local. All of those moments were really, really special to me. And as I kept writing, I started talking more about my identity and what it was like to construct an identity after it had been obliterated. And I started doing that in The Guardian, and that brought me to the attention of agents and publishers who said, you should have a column. And I said, okay, great, I'll take a column in The Guardian, age 23. Started writing loads more about that, and then eventually got offered this book deal, which is now here in my hands. This is Raceless, the memoir, and it talks about exploring race and identity in white spaces. It talks about my travels, and it also talks about other people that were raised in a similarly strange fashion to me, because it might sound quite weird and otherworldly what I've described to you, but there's a lot of identity denial and a lot of racial denial in families where there's shame and there's embarrassment about being the product of an affair, or coming from a different background, shall we say. So all of those moments fed into the type of writer that I am now. All of those moments have fed into the type of writing that I continue to do. I have another book that came out last year called Black Girls Take World, which is an inspiring travel guide for Black women who may want to travel solo, because as I said, when I was traveling around the world, there weren't many people that looked like me. And I think the work that Intrepid's doing, getting content creators, getting writers who are Black, who are mixed, who haven't seen themselves in these spaces before is really, really important. And I hope that, coming to these events and talking to people about my experiences will also inspire other people who want to do the same thing to take the leap and form a career based on things that interest them. So I hope this has been interesting to you, and looking forward to talking to you for the rest of the day.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Georgina. And everyone does actually have a copy of Raceless in their goodie bag today, so you can read a bit more about that later. So thank you, Georgina. And now, Anna, I believe you have a slide that is going to appear on the screen.
Those who know me will be grateful to say it's just one slide. Well, good morning, everybody, and what a joy it is to see such a sea of beautiful faces, such diversity. It's just I have one worry. Hair color doesn't seem to be, I feel in a minority, although Rebecca's here. So you could do something about that, I think. Come on, guys, come out, let go of the hair. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Before I sort of share my moments, and I was a bit greedy, I thought I'd share their relevance to my work, because I'm a little another oddball. I don't lead a company, I don't lead an association, but I am what's a self-employed solopreneur, and I've been that for a long time, an independent consultant that has specialized in research, strategy, and most importantly, how we cope with the big changes that are happening in our world today. I'm happy to say I celebrate my 50th year doing this next year, working in the travel, tourism, and hospitality sector, mostly for destinations, mostly in the past for DMOs, destination marketing organizations, whether they're government-sponsored or not. But more recently, my interest now is working with the broader community where tourism actually takes place, because I'm of the opinion that we in tourism cannot always lead. We must contribute, we must support, and that takes a very different way of thinking. So my role or function has been to help people navigate the very choppy waters of change, and to help them flourish and survive in what is going to be a very different world than the one we're living in today. And it's based on two beliefs that have been definitely shaped by the moments or the events, I would say, of my life. First, that we must make a real change in direction. We've had 50 years of growth. I mean, I've been fortunate to have ridden up through that on this wave of growth and development, which has been a process since the last war of maturation and extension. But now I really do feel all the evidence suggests that, like all things in life, things rise and they start to fall. And we're now going to be going through a very turbulent period, if we're not already in it, of unraveling. Now, to make those changes, to adapt to this unraveling world, you can't do what most people want to do, and that's run out there and do something to affect change. I believe, and I hope my little story will explain why, that what we need to do more than anything right now is not to run out and do anything unless we really know how we actually see and interpret our world, and understand that most of us have been brainwashed to think a certain way. We've internalized our assumptions about how the world works. So that means we've got to wake up. That's why my company is called Conscious Travel. So I'll just creep very briefly, and I had a timer, and of course I'm nervous and I can't find it. So if I go over my 5 minutes, please tell me. But as you can probably see, I grew up in a middle-class English county town, Lewis in Sussex, a monoculture. I had a classical grammar school education. It was a very good education, but it gave me a very clear idea of how the world works, or how we thought the world worked in that very monocultural bubble. And so, you know, I was pretty fixed in my ideas, even at the age of 17 or 18. This is how the world works. But I was always also curious. I had pen pals in India, pen pals in Africa, and I wanted, in a sense, to move out of my bubble. And so there was this wonderful opportunity to join the voluntary service overseas, which was the precursor of Peace Corps, actually, in the States. And I wanted to go somewhere sunny, warm, and I still do, actually. I'm frozen half. I live on the border with Wales, and I'm always cold. So I actually made the mistake of being honest and telling the people when they asked me, where would you like to go? And I said, I really want to go to Africa. I've been studying Western Africa for 2 years in my geography A-levels, and so they sent me to Northern Labrador. Labrador, for those who don't know geography, is in northern Canada, right? It's part of Labrador and Newfoundland, the last part of Canada to join Canada, actually. It was the last part of the British Empire that actually became Canadian as such. A small isolated village, maybe 500, 800 people, made up of Inuit, white settlers who were going north in search of more cod, and a mixture of the two. And what they didn't tell my parents were 200 American GIs on the hill operating a NORAD station. I'm very happy they weren't in Vietnam. But my first real wake-up, was being exposed, and the picture of me is the picture of me sitting outside the Moravian mission. Everything was run by either missionaries, schools run by missionaries, Moravians, the hospital was run by the Grenfell mission. Obviously there was RCMP, there was the Hudson Bay. So we had different sets of people in the village. But we also had a section of the village separate from the rest, of a row of what I considered, from my perspective, to be three pretty basic wooden construction shacks, basically, but they had been built by the Canadian government in their benevolence to house the people from a village way, way north that had suffered from flu in the 1940s. So the best thing to do, they felt, was to divide the village up into three and settle them in the three further settlements further south. So in a sense, what I was witnessing while I was there and dealing with, and I won't go into the details, was my first exposure to cultural genocide. For seeing people that had been utterly deprived of everything that gave them meaning and purpose in their lives. And essentially the ignorance of people like myself and people, as I say, that were providing all this beneficence, the school, the hotel, etc. A lack of appreciation and understanding and empathy of their situation. But of course, I was only 17 or 18, and one carries on. I went to university in London after that, got a scholarship to go to New Zealand to be an academic. That was like being a frog dropped in hot water. I jumped right out. I didn't stay an academic. I fell in love, as you would do, with a Canadian bush pilot, as you would do. Followed him. And we both discovered a mutual love of travel, but we were penniless. And so we were one of those hippies that traveled overland all the way from New Zealand. We got as far as to Delhi. It took 4 months. It was an amazing experience. There was no internet, no westernization for all intents and purposes. Every single place you stopped had different food, different language. That's really hard travel. I couldn't have done it, by the way, on my own then. I had a wonderful man to protect me, and very often he had to. But the big experience was my experience in Bali, hence this picture. We're eating at a local warung with the locals under a banyan tree, tilly little lights in the tree. It's romantic, it's dark, the smell of clove cigarettes, etc. For those of you who've been there will never forget that. Pure, absolute enchanting. It was suddenly silence. And out of that velvet silence, if you know what I mean, the clash of gamelan woke us all up, and this image of a masked image of both the Barong and Rangda, the evil force. And then I watched that dance, which you've probably heard about, where the men fall on their krises, and they were in a pure trance. Now, given my classical education, this isn't supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be able to lean on your sword and not bleed or anything. So I remember that night, even today, that suddenly my world turns upside down. There is a way of living on this world that isn't the way I was taught it was going to be. So that had a big impression on me. And then I also just found Bali enchanting. Bali is everything that we're trying to sell today. It was community-based. We split in people's homes. We ate their local food, their grace, their charm. It was just captivating. And if I'd have known what the rest of the trip was going to be like, I would have stayed. I'd be there now. Anyway, if I'm going over time, just shout. Okay. Fast forward again, I joined my bush pilot fiance. We got married, we got mortgage, we got children, or a child, and I started climbing the corporate ladder, et cetera, and worked in tourism. That's another story how I got there. But so as a consequence of that, I was invited back to a conference some 15 years later, being held by PATA, Pacific Asia Travel, to celebrate the opening of Nusa Dua, which is the big tourism complex on the south side of the island. And I was utterly freaked, shocked. What I considered to be a concrete ghetto, as it were, and it was designed to keep the tourists away to protect the Balinese. Didn't succeed, as you all know. But it really woke me up because none of the people that were with me on that trip had any interest in meeting the Balinese at all. You know, there would be cocktail parties, the dancing would go on the difference, and I plead with them, you've got to come and experience this island while you're here. It's just, you know, don't stay in these dry, sterile conversations about tourism. Go and actually be a visitor, be a guest. And I could get one person actually to come with me, and I did that. But it had an impact. So it's another one of those moments. And I suppose really it's that importance of just letting go, of becoming curious, of engaging, and my interest in indigenous cultures particularly, but other ways of seeing the world is what was the theme of my work. And it just constantly permeated everything until in 2010, it was another part of conference. I was invited to speak on values to a conference in Samoa, in Polynesia. And that led to my going back 4 times, spending time with a number of families, getting to know them really well, and again, having insights into how they see the world. And the reason I have a picture of the waka up there is that those who don't know, the Polynesians crisscrossed the entire Pacific Ocean without any instrumentation at all. They only did it by the stars, they did it by sensing and feeling nature. So that brings us to where we are now, which is, in my opinion, the biggest change we have to make as humanity on this planet is to fundamentally reconnect with the natural world. And it is, in fact, the indigenous peoples of this planet who are going to be our guides and teachers. And we in tourism who take people to other places have to become sensitive to what they have to say and become, in a sense, amplifiers of their message. So that's my shot. I hope I haven't gone over too much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna. And I think definitely grab a coffee with Anna later because she has got a lot of great stories to share. Okay, so Alexa, can I ask you to share?
You guys can hear me. Hi, I'm Alexa. I'm the CEO and founder of tripAbrood. And there are my 3 kids on the big screen. So I think, you know, where I'm going to kind of talk through is just my journey into travel. So I came from outside travel. I kind of grew up in Hertfordshire area. I vowed I'd never come back after I moved to Asia, and I am living in the village next to my parents still. I think that's what happens when you have kids, babysitting on tap. But my journey into travel was, I think, relatively abnormal, which is I went to a great school, I went to a great university. I found myself initially in FMCG, in HR, had a real passion for people, but then realized that if I can't execute, I get very upset. So there was this particular moment when I was in Frankfurt at the Pampers factory, and they had this amazing plan on selling Pampers. And they were like, thanks so much for your strategy sessions, they were great. I was like, oh, what? No, the fun's happening. I want to actually do that thing. So I realized very quickly, you know, sales and being able to drive and execute is really my passion. So I fell then into financial services, and that's where I spent over a decade. And I had a wonderful time at the company I was working for, focused on technology and data. Bloomberg, you might be aware of it. And that took me also to Asia, where I ran the Hong Kong office, and then back to London. And my last job was running a division of 300 people. We were bringing in around 200 million in annual recurring revenue in the sales businesses that I was running. And I had a great career. And I think I'm just going to focus on a key moment that matters for me, which is, this is actually when we were going back to Hong Kong and we were introducing my 3rd child, Axel, to our friends out in Hong Kong where we'd lived. I'd had 2 children out there and we'd come back to the UK. And I had tried to research and book a place to stay in Hong Kong. If some of you know the journey of tripAbrood, you probably know this story, but essentially I took 6 weeks of the commute to try and find a hotel with a swimming pool and a room that fit 5 of us, and ended up compromising and booking a self-catering apartment overlooking a cemetery on the wrong side of Hong Kong Island. And this is one of the many moments where we looked out the metropolis of Hong Kong And I had this moment circulating, how could there not have been a hotel room that fit my family? And even the pool wasn't heated, and that was one of the key criteria for us. So the holiday was great, but the accommodation wasn't. And I went back to work and I parked that thought. There's a great opportunity here to really think of family travel in a totally different way. But then the paycheck kept rolling in, and life was good. And my key moment that matters actually was when I was in New York and I was on a business trip, and I was FaceTiming my children. And my son didn't recognize me. And he looked away and cuddled into the nanny. And it was this heartbreaking moment of realizing I've raised 3 kids. I had a 2-week maternity leave. I go to work when they're asleep. I come back and they're asleep. And what am I going to regret when I'm older? Am I going to regret not continuing this career ladder? Or am I going to regret missing out on the last year of my 3rd son before he goes to school? And that was pre-pandemic, so there wasn't any sort of flexibility or work from home processes, and obviously a lot's changed since then. But I had this sort of crise de confiance. It was just this moment where I was like, I can't keep the charade that actually, yes, women, empowerment, let's go, let's, be at the upper echelons, because my challenge was that to do that, I had to not be the mum that I wanted to be. I couldn't seem to work out how to be both at that point. And so the reason that I left my career at the time was not to found tripAbrood. It was to be the mum that I wanted to work out how to be. And so after a 6 weeks process of really thinking through life, I took the leap of faith and started being a full-time mum, which meant I had to learn how to cook. And this is very embarrassing for me, but I hadn't learned how to cook. I didn't know how to use the washing machine. I'd literally sort of delegated that side of my life to be able to really lean into the career that I had. And I was also doing the school run for the first time. And I had this really exciting moment of like, yay, I'm on the school run, but what do I do? Where do they go? Which classroom are they in? But I also started just hearing this constant chatter in the playground of, I've been looking for a family holiday, and I've been looking online, I haven't found anything. You look really tanned. Where have you been? And then someone would go, well, I went to this place, it was amazing. They're like, okay, I'll write that down on my list. Because if you liked it and your kids get on with my kids, and I really like you, then I'm probably likely to like it as well. And it just overwhelmed me, the amount of conversation that happened in the playground. And it reminded me that maybe it wasn't just me being a bit dumb on my commute into London to try and figure out this Hong Kong stay. And that was the seed of tripAbrood planted in me that then led me to tour the country and run focus groups, to spend 3 months in the British Library learning travel and bringing on a set of advisors around me to help me really appreciate why there are challenges when you're a family that are different to when you're traveling without a family. And as I say, the rest is history, but I just wanted to focus on that moments of matter. And for me, often people talk about founding a business, and there's lots of success stories, and they're great around stepping away and into a new business. And I just want to, share a bit of a counter story, which is that I didn't leave my job to start tripAbrood. I left it to try and be the woman and the parent that I wanted to be. And now I've been able to craft a business, and I'm able to do the school runs, and they don't remember a time when I wasn't there. And that's the wonderful thing about life, which is you can self-correct, and you can look back and think, actually, I feel like now I'm in an authentic place that I wanted to be, and it was blooming hard. I won't, and I'm very happy to share the ups and downs with anybody. Losing the regular paycheck and losing the career label. But what I found is an authenticity that I don't want to really ever leave. Whatever I do next, of really thinking about what am I going to regret, and then making sure that I don't go down that path before it's too late.
Thank you, Alexa. Lots of really personal moments there. I'm going to ask Kat to share her moments that matter.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Kat. I am founder and CEO of Byway. We're all about slow travel and amazing holidays overland, by train and boat and bus and bike and all those glorious things. So that's sort of my context. And I was asked to bring a prop. And we've had books and we've had slides. I have a pencil. My pencil is because I think as I was thinking through the moments that have mattered for me and have brought me, I'm not from the travel industry. I'm quite a newcomer to the industry, founding a travel business with limited knowledge of the existing space that I'm coming into. And as I've thought about the moments that I wanted to talk about, I've realised how important the space that I have created and that I have kind of co-created with my husband for him and for me to pause and look at, right, where are we and where do we want to go? And keep pulling ourselves on. We actually do now quarterly offsites to insist that we, every quarter, look at, right, what are our vision and mission as a family and as individuals, and what do we want to achieve? And then sort of physically writing those things down and thinking about how am I where I want to be right now? And so that's really my pencil, is that thread that is coming through of sort of taking the time to be deliberate and intentional and write things down. And it's pencil, so you can rub it out and you can change it. But maybe that will make more sense as I go. So I think the first moment that I wanted to talk about was when I was in Kuala Lumpur. So I came out of a lovely school life. I did my A-levels, I did a physics degree, and I went down, various graduate fairs, went around my graduate fairs, and there were various consultancies that I might go to and lots of finance things that I might go to as a physics graduate. Went and did a couple of internships with Accenture, and they were in the Accenture Development Partnerships arm, so I was building a network of food banks in South Africa, and I was building a portal for NGO collaboration in Bangkok, and they were small teams, and I was one of 3 people, and I was an intern, but I was able to go and pitch the chair of Pick n Pay, which is biggest supermarket chain in Africa, because there were only 3 of us and everyone else was busy. So there was a lot of growth for me there, and there was a sense of sort of ownership and interest that I really enjoyed. Which I just sort of assumed would carry into a graduate program at Accenture, which was what I was supposed to do after these internships that I'd done while I was studying. So I had kind of taken a graduate role. I took a gap year after I studied, and I went traveling overland on lots and lots of buses around South America for about 5 months with my then boyfriend, now husband. And then we were supposed to do exactly the same thing in Southeast Asia. And when we got there, we sort of said, actually, maybe it's been this glorious travel experience has been brilliant, but actually maybe we're ready to settle somewhere and just spend a bit more time getting to know a place rather than going, it was 4 months, it wasn't quick, but we thought actually it'd be really nice to just be somewhere for 3 months. So we got an apartment in Kuala Lumpur, and we just based ourselves there for 3 months and got to know what it felt like to live there. And we actually set up a business, which was a tour booking business, so a little bit of travel, because we'd had a real problem figuring out which tours were safe and available in Bolivia. So we set that up, and our Spanish was mediocre, and we were in totally the wrong time zone, so our suppliers were asleep when we were awake. But it was a real adventure into starting something, and it was when we went out for street food one evening, we'd kind of come out of the flat and we'd been building this business, and that was our first moment where we had said, right, what do we both want? We've learned a lot about ourselves from all of this travel and this experience. So what do we now want to do? And are the things that we've said we're going to do when we get home going to be those things that take us on that journey? And I think for me, I realised, well, no, probably not. Probably going into a 2-year corporate graduate program at Accenture is not going to be the startup vibrancy that I've enjoyed here. It's not going to be the small team and the autonomy that I enjoyed in the internship programs. And maybe, I probably at some point in future like the idea of founding a company. So maybe I should go and work at one where someone who has already founded a company knows what they're doing. Maybe that's going to be a really interesting, exciting thing for me to do. So I broadly Googled some travel startups, found some interesting ones that were doing fun things in London, emailed them and said, I'd quite like to join a startup. Do you want me? And one of them said yes. So I went into video ad tech, and I spent 10 years at video ad tech in this company, Unreally. I was number 9 in, and it was a proper bootstrap startup. And I stayed there right through. We had a £114 million exit, and I stayed sort of up to that journey and then beyond that journey into the exec team while we were integrating with the parent company. So sort of went really through a long life cycle. And during that period of sort of 10 years in sort of an industry that I never really, it was an accidental industry. It wasn't my training and it wasn't really my interest, which really has always been travel. But I spent 10 years doing it, and that was again where this sit down that we had, where we were checking in on, I'd done quite well on, like, this is a good track for getting to a sort of startup-y world, but maybe that other thing that I wanted around having an impact in the world and being, creating things that were a force for good. Maybe I didn't feel I was doing as much of that. So that moment, again, this was around our kitchen table, me and my husband, and it was probably, I was maybe 4 years into my time at Unruly, and we sat down and said, I basically concluded after a conversation that I needed to be a bit more intentional about building in other layers. Like, I was enjoying what I was doing at Unruly. It was teaching me loads. I was earning good money. And we decided that, number one, we want to have a family, and it's never a good, easy time, usually. In my experience, it's never been an obvious, right, it would be nice to have a baby right now, because I had so many things that I wanted to do and achieve. So that was sort of decision one was, well, let's get on with it then, shall we? And let's just have a baby, and it'll work itself out. Let's also then, we haven't got room in our studio flat for a baby, so let's think about buying a house. But given that I know at some point probably I want to take some serious risk, and I don't know what, and I don't know what it will be, and I don't know who it will be with, but creating space for that to be possible, we said we will get a house and we'll buy a house that has another bedroom, but we won't get one that I might have thought of for the job that I had that I could afford to do, because we didn't want a big mortgage and we didn't want to have loads of commitments, because we wanted to preserve that flexibility, because we both knew that we wanted this entrepreneurial journey, and there's a lot of risk with that. So we, at that point, kind of made a clear decision not to make a serious long-term financial commitment, because it freed us up to make other decisions, even though we didn't know what they would be, in the future. And then the final thing we did there in that little summit that we had was I went and decided to sign up for a Master's in Sustainable Development, which I did at SOAS in my evenings and weekends while I was working at Unruly and having some children. And that was amazing for me, because it helped me get some discipline behind that driver for, where is that stuff that I want to be doing in the world? And I accept that I'm working in advertising right now, but at least I'm getting some rigor into some of these things and are deepening my understanding. So I think that was a really important moment for me. Once I got to a point where my 10-year journey at Unruly was kind of concluding, there was another moment there where I was sort of getting a sense that, I'm ready, I've done that full life cycle, I'm ready to do something different. And this was where we'd had a quarterly offsite we were walking on, and I can't remember, I think it was the South Downs, but it could have been somewhere in the West Country. But generally what we tend to do is go away and have one night away and walk a lot on the first day and walk a lot on the second day. And we generally get one day each where he'll talk to me and challenge me about all of the things that I want and what am I doing, and then I'll do the same for him on the second day. And it was a really kind of healthy time to help me to realise I'd gone very deep on one company, and now if I'm going to go and start a company, again, don't know what it's going to be, but wouldn't it be good to go closer to an industry that I care about, and wouldn't it be good to get a sense of many more different types of startups and different types of founding team and how they all work? And so I'd sort of concluded through this long conversation that we had over the course of about 8 hours that maybe it would be a good idea to go and start investing in travel companies, and that would probably achieve a lot of what I wanted to do in terms of soaking up a whole set of things about different startups. But I had no experience in investing and I had no experience in travel. But I think the sense of taking that time to give myself the good, like, if I could do anything, what would be a sensible thing for me to do right now? And having that support from him where I could really just feel like there's no reason I shouldn't be able to do that. So then I went and found there was a role at Founders Factory, managing director for travel and media, so I could do the media bit. And then I just had to convince everyone and myself that I would be able to do the travel bit and I'd be able to do the investing bit. And luckily, we managed to convince each other of that, and the team at Founders Factory hired me in to do that role. And I think because I went in very openly that I don't really know about travel or investing. Well, they were, Brent's the founding team of lastminute.com. Henry, who runs Founders Factory, is travel guy too. He was also at Last Minute. So because I went in like that, it was actually quite good because then they just said, well, we know that, so we can teach you that bit. And they were really generous. And again, like you, building that network of advisors around me where I'd sort of said, okay, I need people who can help me understand the space that I'm moving into and teach me how to do all of these things. And I had enough sort of angels, allies, these sorts of people who were able to just open up their books of contacts to me and say, oh, you should talk to that person and that person can teach you about this. And everybody was just so generous, and it really helped me get up a very big learning curve on a couple of things very, very quickly. And then I suppose my next moment was when I had been doing this time at Founders Factory for a year and had made investments in travel companies. Had also been working, and my role was partly invest in existing travel startups, but also create new ones from scratch and find the founders to come and run them and make that really early investment in creating a company. So I was doing quite a lot with trends and data and concepting, and I was watching, I'd enjoyed my overland travel experience, but I've never owned a car myself. I've always been the lady who travels around on trains, and that's how I holiday, and I've always looked really quite unusual. And by the time I was looking at the data in Founders Factory, I was saying, actually, I don't look as unusual anymore. It looks like, more people. We've got this sort of rise of sustainability driving a lot of decision making. We've got the rise of the slow food movement and the mindfulness and the sense of connection, and these things are really happening at quite a big scale now. So I started working on, well, what would a slow travel business look like? And my job was figure out what the business is, find the people to run the business and persuade them to run it, and then off they go and you invest in them. And so that was, again, my lovely pencil, which is now on the floor. That was where, again, we did our quarterly offsite, and I don't think I would have thought of it had we not been sitting down anyway with our pencils and our paper and saying, right, where are we at now and where do we want to go? And I was thinking, well, actually, I'm just in love with this concept that is emerging around slow travel. It's everything that I've always done. And actually, that was the evening that Boris Johnson went on to, I think we had him on the computer. We don't have a TV, so we had him on the computer, and he said, we're all going into a lockdown. And it was the first one, and coronavirus is here. And that happened the evening we were talking, and I said, well, the industry's going to look totally different, right? Everything's going to change. And so that was the next moment where we said, well, this is clearly my business. I'm just going to go and do it, and I'm just going to go and give up my job. I went in the next day, and then I was in all the papers for being the crazy lady that founded a travel business in the middle of a lockdown. But it was really brilliant. And the final moment that I had to share was one where it was maybe 2 months later, 3 months later, and we were in lockdown, so maybe 2 months later. We were in lockdown. I'd incorporated the company. I'd got a website up. We had a waiting list building. We couldn't send anyone away if we'd wanted to. Luckily, we didn't know how to yet anyway. So we were building this waiting list, and I was signing up to be a B Corp, and I was going through I couldn't be a full B Corp, we are now, but I was going through I want to be a pending B Corp, and that's important to me, that's a lot of what the company should stand for. And I was filling in this form, and I had 2 children. Nurseries were closed, so I had how old were they? 1 and 3, probably, 2 and 4, something like this. Children around my feet, 2 and 4 they would have been. And it was a sunny day, and I set up a computer table outside, and I set up a big water tray, and put the children in the swimming costumes, and I had water pistols, and I was firing water pistols at them while I was doing my B Corp application. And I'd already been struggling through 2 months of how do I start a company as a sole founder with 2 children at home all the time, and I had my husband at home all the time too, so we did 50-50, and we both found that challenging, but not as challenging as if I'd been doing all of it by any means. But I think for me, that final bit was, do you know what, this is actually really fun to do it this way, where they're playing, they're happy, I'm firing water pistols at them, I'm trying not to get water on my laptop, I'm thinking about the challenges that the B Corp process was sending my way around what kind of company do I want to build. This is the kind of company I want to build, one where I can do this with my children and they can be around and they can be part of what we're doing. And I had some meetings that day when they were dialing in and they were, everybody quite enjoyed seeing them there, and other people had their, various things that they were doing in lockdown. And that then sort of was that final crystallization of like, that's where we are going to be really flexible and we are going to have, children and parents and dogs and cats and dishwasher repair people on cameras all the time in our company, and that is kind of what we've done. And it was it was a forced moment that happened to coincide with the B Corp application and was just a really lucky juxtaposition of things that set us on a great path for the culture of the company. Yeah.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Kat. And I think, you've got so much energy. Please bottle it and sell it because I want some of that. But I think there's a lot there, and I think there are some common themes coming through in threads. But Nena, please share your moments that matter.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. Well, firstly, I'm delighted to be here. I'm really humbled to be given the opportunity to speak about my moment that mattered. So I'm Nena Chaletzos. I'm the founder of Luxtripper, and we sell luxury, beautiful trips. But essentially what we really focus on is making the whole trip building process really easy. So if you think about a tailor-made itinerary, which is very bespoke to an individual, you can have 16, 20 parts of that trip, very opposite to Byway, but we are trying to look at how we can offset a lot of the CO2 at the moment. But essentially what we're doing is creating technology that makes the whole process of building a complex itinerary really easy for our agents, for our customers, for everyone. I have a background in HR as well, previous, so 20 years in HR before I came into travel. And the moment that matters that I'm going to talk about is a couple of dig deep moments during the business. So not previously how I got in, but actually whilst I was in the business, being early stage to today. And I have a slide which, this was early stage for us. And one of the things, the moment that mattered for me was in 2016, I had 12 people. We were into our second year as a startup. And I had 12 people then, and one of the things that I started, was becoming obvious was we were running out of cash. So, but I really was on this mission to make, this vision about trip building easy, and serving, all these clients, beautiful trips. And we were in these lovely fancy offices at the time, and I had to make a decision to think about, what do I need to do to grow the business? And for me, people has always been my driving force behind any job that I have had in HR, but also within Luxtripper. I knew that my business wasn't a great idea. It wasn't the technology, it was my people. And in order for me to grow and get to where I needed the talent in the business. So I made a decision that I was going to get rid of the fancy offices and all these fancy parties and everything else that you do in the early stage startup to get those people on board. Because to get people on board, it's tough when you're early stage. They're taking a risk. They don't know much about you. How do you get them on board? So I had to make this decision, and I was very scared to tell my team, hey guys, I'm going to get rid of these nice offices and I'm going to get you all into my house. It's going to be really great. And so I knew at that point I had to get them involved in the conversation. So we got into the room and said, look, we have this amazing mission we are going to achieve. It's really tough and we're so excited. And there's so many things that we've got to do, but would you rather us have more people in the business? Yeah, we would. Okay, we need to sacrifice something. And my idea is, let's get into my house for 9 months, 12 months, whatever it takes, but we can invest that money into more people, more talent. What do you think? And you know what? They were all behind it, because the key for me was about getting them engaged into the mission, into the vision, what we want to change, getting them passionate about it, and talking to them about, I'm going to give you all amazing opportunities, a platform to perform. I know you came in for this role, but I think you're going to be brilliant at that, looking at what your core talent is. Would you like to do marketing instead of this? Would you like to do that? And that created this kind of community of us working together on a mission and a cause. So we all moved home. We had the sales team in my third bedroom. We had the tech guys in the living room. We had the marketing and finance team in the kitchen, which was also the meeting room whenever we had like suppliers or anyone coming in. And they all thought it was really cool. I remember 4 Seasons, we were doing a hotel contract deal. We got them into the house in the kitchen, got my mum over to make the cup of tea and everything. It was really cool. And they liked it. Well, this is working. But, you know, for me, which goes on to, well, actually, there's a picture there of my cats, which is a really interesting moment, that we hired another salesperson. We had run out of space. So we had to evict the cats from the cat stand, and his desk was that cat stand. And I remember we were doing, it was his first sale. He had his laptop on one ledge and his phone on the top ledge. And the customer called, and he answered it, and he was closing the deal. We closed the booking, and we were all dancing around the cat stand, celebrating with champagne. But it was, you know, it's not glamorous and flashy trying to grow a business. You know, I know when I first started, I saw this, oh, it's amazing. Oh my God, it's going to be so super cool. WeWorks, this, that, and the other. But no, we had to make those smart decisions. Cash is king. Where do we invest? Which takes me on to my next slide that, you know, in 2020, we had to get an office. We were much bigger. We had people working from home and in the office. So this is Liverpool Street, London. But the same moment occurred, the pandemic, and we'd grown a business, had a really amazing team, and it was like, oh my God, I can see it coming. The travel industry is about to close. I feel it, I can see the signs. I get this feeling that we're all going to be told to work from home in early February, and I literally said to my team, it was really a humbling moment, and I was really emotional because I thought, all I care about is a roof over your head, you feed your family, and we survive. Everything else is secondary. And I remember saying this to them, that I feel this is coming and we are going to have to sending people out, and I have a feeling we're going to have to work from home. So if you all agree with me, grab your equipment, grab your screens, run home, and let's try to work out how we're going to work from home. But all I care about is you guys survive with the business. We have to eat, we have to survive. And by engaging everyone in that moment, which was terrifying, you know, as a founder, I all of a sudden become so aware that I had so many mouths to feed and their families. That became my driving force as a woman. I didn't care about anything else. And I opened up and I shared my fears and I said, I don't know how to do this. I've never done this before. How are we going to do it together? And everyone stepped up. So one person said, I tell you what, let me go home first. I'll man the phones. Then when I'm home and I'm answering the calls, then the next person goes home and sets up. And then they're all hustled in. We lifted. And for me, that was a powerful moment that I knew it happened twice. And from the earliest stage, I knew that I'm a female founder, I'm only one person. I cannot carry all the problems of the world on my own shoulders. I have this amazing crew of people. They want the opportunity and the platform to step up. How do I let them? And in these dig deep moments, that's when you have to open up to your vulnerability and share it. And you will see them step up because they have that chance. And we are a people industry, right? So why do we think we have to be this really strong, don't worry, I've got it all, I'm powerful, it's down to me? No, we don't. So that was my biggest learning, that being vulnerable is my power. And then, which takes me on to where we are today, which is the next slide. And we, on that slide, the girl in the corner is standing with my mum. She won an award at the TTG as the best travel agent for tourism and adventure. We've also won, we've won multiple awards. We're down for best place to work. And last week we made the Phoebe 100 list, which replaces the Sunday Times Fast Track 100 as the only travel company on the list for the fastest growing founder-led businesses. So I'm really proud that through a pandemic, we came out and made this fast track, ahead of companies like Huel, this meal replacement business. And, my key take for this is, yes, invest in your technology, invest in your idea and all these other things. But more important for me was invest in your biggest asset, being an HR director for 20 plus years, is your people. And now we're 150 strong people. Start the pandemic, we were 45 people. So we're really, that is down to my team, and I will not take any credit for it. So those are the moments for me that really matter and bring us to where we are.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Nena. And I think there are, you've set up businesses, a lot of the panelists here, you forged your own way, and I'm sure there are lots of questions from the audience about how you've got where you are and key takeaways from you as well. So I'm just conscious we haven't got very much time. Do we have time for some questions from the audience, or should we go to the panel's key takeaways? How are we doing for time? Can we carry on? Okay, we're going to go for a couple of questions from the audience. So, one question. Sorry, oh gosh, right. You got to. I'll count 3, 2, 1. Then you have to put your hands up really quickly. 3, 2, 1. Oh. Any questions? Oh yes, there's a lady at the front here. It's you.
So I don't know how we're managing that.
Okay.
So I don't know your names, but I think two of you, you particularly mentioned how you got scared when you saw your kid not recognizing you. So a little about me. I just did my master's from University of Surrey, and I'm joining Intrepid Travel this Monday. So I'm just getting in the thing. What I wanted to really ask you, or anyone who has gotten it right, is how do you balance as a woman between your family and career, a very fancy career, without compromising one or the other?
Wow.
Alexa, do you want to take that?
Wowza. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be able to give a good answer. I think probably if we surveyed everybody in the room, we'd probably get somewhere good. So I'm going to feign my take on it, but it is just mine. And for me, the biggest difference that I see in what I'm doing now is that my children are part of my experience, are part of the journey that I'm on. So from over lockdown, them creating activity packs for other children, we went viral with those activity packs, helping children to travel the world from home. And they were the kids in the pictures. So we spent most of the beginning of lockdown creating piñatas and doing different things. But that was their establishment of, okay, mummy's doing something and it's about cultural exploration and I'm getting to hit a piñata, this is really fun. And what's translated now that into is my son asking me on a daily basis, how many bookings did you make today? So that's his normal question when I pick him up from school. And then he'd be like, yeah, all right. And it's also kind of materialized in my daughter starting to set up her own club at school. And it's just a simple idea, but colouring club. And she suddenly turned around and said, well, it started with 5 people, but now all of reception and year 1 want to join in. So I need to print some more colouring pictures. And I was just so proud because I was like, I'm not saying that I get everything right, but I think what I'm proud of is that they are engaging in the concept and that it's inspiring them, seeing me do something, start a business from scratch that I'm really passionate about. They know my team, they regularly appear on camera, but I think the reason why they get it is because they're involved in some way. And so I think that would be my take on it, and that's the difference from the life that I led before that they didn't understand and that took me away a lot of the time. I think even if you are taken away, if they can appreciate what you're doing and you can take them in some way on that journey, I think that has been revolutionary for me.
Would any of the other panelists like to elaborate?
I think for you, my experience was I had to bring my family. I don't have children, so I do have 2 cats. They are my children, but I had to bring my family on the journey. My husband, my parents, my family, and actually I brought my sisters into the business. The reason for that is you actually do end up sacrificing a lot of your time, but when you can get them involved, you do spend more time sort of together on that journey together. But the other thing I would say is every day you have to find the balance to say, I know that if I'm going to start a business, it's going to be relentless. You've got to 10 times your effort. But what is my balance? Is it before I start work? Is it midday? Is it the end? And that's the ritual I have, is at the start of the morning, I always do, something for myself. Midday, it's my family. At the end of the day, it's my husband. And you have to structure it in to how you're going to fit it in. But it is not an easy journey. I will be honest, it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's amazing what you can create as well at the same time. You've just got to find the right mentors around you to support you on that journey. Great.
Thank you, Nena. Thank you for answering that. So we have to be off the stage very, very soon. So can I just ask, 5 seconds only, your advice to those who want to tread the paths that you are treading at the moment in terms of being an entrepreneur, being a writer, attracting investment, having the resilience to do what you do? Just very quickly, maybe starting with Georgina.
Yeah, I would say not listening to other people who aren't in the same bubble as you. So lots of people will tell you when you're starting out that you shouldn't, go solo, or you shouldn't leave your job to be a freelancer, or you shouldn't start content creating, or whatever it is. But I think often those people are operating from a place of fear and anxiety, and sometimes because they can't imagine themselves doing the same thing, they'll try and dissuade you from following your own path. So I think being able to take advice and listen to your friends and family, but also knowing when to tune out of other people's insights when they're not particularly useful to your own personal journey has been really, really key for me. And, it's really satisfying also seeing those people come back a couple of years later and be like, oh, you did it. You followed your dream. You've written the book, or you've started that business. And it's really nice to actually say, yeah, I managed to tune you out, and, here we are.
Thanks, Georgina. Anna?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects. One, obviously, in my case, is really sustain always that sense of humility and curiosity. What is happening here? How can I learn from it? But what I really enjoyed listening to Nena is this emphasis on helping the people that you're working with also grow, So I think we're here to help each other grow ourselves. And so the two go together for me.
Thank you. And Nena?
Don't be fearful if you're feeling I'm coming into this naively, if that's such a word, because naivety is one of the best things when you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Because if you know what I know now, I don't know if I would have done it. So don't worry, it will get you there. So stick with your belief, and you will get there.
Great. I think for me, it's thinking about setting your personal vision and mission and writing it down. Like, what do I want to achieve? And, making sure that you're holistically, like we go so far. I go so far as to set personal OKRs on a quarterly basis. And some of those are about the company, but some of those are about the children and the family, and some of them might be about my social friends and like my other extended family. So I think being conscious of setting those goals that draw all of those threads in together and combine them, and keep a sight of where you're headed, even when you're 10 years away from being anywhere near it.
Yeah, thank you. Alexa?
Two things really quickly. One is be transparent, which is something that I've learnt time and again. Is when you're transparent with your team, when you're transparent with people you're pitching to, there's a real authenticity about that. Like, I'm not bullshitting my way through this. I'm genuinely saying all the great things, but I'm taking you through the risks as well. And that's from both the team and investor side. And the second thing I'd say is have faith in your own abilities. Because so many times I've sort of I can't see the wood from the trees. And then it suddenly just parts and you're like, okay, I knew I'd get there. So, you are all amazingly capable. And I think that's something that I've learnt myself, which is have more faith in my own abilities.
And on that note, please give our panellists a round of applause. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the forum. And please try and meet these ladies for coffee today, another day. They're really, truly inspiring. Thank you.